Our speaker today is
This meeting is being recorded.
our speaker today is Sam Smith. He's with DHR, and just a little bit about Sam. He's has been employed with DHR for over 24 years. He started as a worker in Russell County. In 1988, he got promoted to supervisor in 1999. He left DHR for 1 year to work with the Alabama Board of Pardons and Parole as a probation officer. He then returned in 2007 to DHR to work at the state office. He went back to school in 2011 and obtained his master's degree in social work, became the county director at Bibb County DHR for 1 year in 2014, became the county director at Calhoun DHR for 2 years from 2015 and 2017. In 2017, he was appointed as a division director for adult protective services division in DHR. So our topic today is indicators of abuse and neglect and exploitation. This is according to the Alabama Code of 38-9-8, who is required to report adult abuse, and he's going to go through all of that with you today. So welcome, Sam, and we are glad to have you sharing with us today.
Good morning, Vonda and Tracy and anyone else who's on the line. Thank you all for having me today. It's certainly a pleasure to be able to provide this information. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask them. I will answer what I can, and what I can't, I will get back with you. All right, go ahead to the next screen. All right, this is some statistical information that really drives home the issue in Alabama. There are thousands of elderly and disabled adults who are abused and are neglected and exploited in Alabama every year. And last year alone, our department, the DHR, received about 11,122 reports of elder abuse. There was an estimated 1 in 10 Americans over the age of 60 that have experienced abuse. Victims include adults of all genders, races, and incomes. And the problem is expected to worsen as adults live longer and become more and more dependent on others for their care. And we know that with the baby boomers getting up in age, that we're going to see more and more population of elders. But, we serve not only our elder population, but also our disabled population. And they also are sometimes victims of abuse. Next. This is the code of Alabama 3898 that requires physicians, practitioners of the healing arts, and caregivers to report suspected abuse. There is immunity for anyone who reports suspected abuse from civil or criminal liability. And professionals should also recognize that older and disabled adults are among the most vulnerable people in our society, and the professionals who come in contact with them both have an opportunity and a duty to protect them. So if abuse is suspected, there's an 800 number that you can call, 1-800-458-7214, or you can call your local county Department of Human Resources. There are 67 counties in the state, and each county has a Department of Human Resources which can take a report of suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation. You can also call your local law enforcement to make a report. And I've also included a DHR email address that comes up here to our intake at the State Department, aps@dhr.alabama.gov, and all reports that are made can be made. They are all confidential, but they can also be made anonymously if you do not wish your identity to be known. Next. All right, let's talk about the indicators of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Some of these are extreme, and these are not all of these do not occur on a daily basis, but they're on this list because they have happened or there is a chance that they could happen. So physical and emotional indicators, there could be cuts, lacerations, puncture wounds, bruises, welts, discoloration of the skin, or poor hygiene, sunken eyes or cheeks, meaning they're not getting enough food, nutrition, eye problems, retinal detachment, black eyes, pulled out hair, torn, stained, or bloody underclothing, burns, such as thought left by ropes, cigarettes, and acid, locked in rooms, tied to furniture or the toilet. They could be withdrawn or depressed, resigned, or helpless. And some of the indicators is that they are hesitant to talk openly. They may deny that there's a problem, and they may also appear fearful of the caregiver or family member. In a lot of cases, the older adult has lost touch with family and friends other than the caregiver, and so they don't have any contact with any outside resources or people that they can talk with about these concerns. Next. So elders and disabled adults can also be exploited financially. And one way this happens is when a family member or a caretaker comes in and takes over the person's finances. There could be unpaid bills when the income is adequate, personal loans not repaid. They could be missing checks or jewelry from or other valuables from their home and not know where they're at. They could have a power of attorney signed by a confused person. And when somebody doesn't have the capacity to make decisions, they cannot sign a power of attorney legally. And sometimes a caregiver or a family member may ask them to do that, and so that they can exploit them. If their property changes in titles suspiciously, this could be an indication of financial exploitation. There could be unusual activity in the bank account, large sums of money being withdrawn and not knowing where the money is going, or whether it's going for the person's care or to some other area. Sometimes, even though the person can't write, they come up with signed documents or checks. And it's obvious that the person didn't sign those checks because they don't have the ability to write. So that means that somebody else signed the documents for them. Sometimes the caretaker is more concerned with the person's finances than they are with their quality of care. This is one of the indicators to look for is when a family member or caretaker is more interested in the person's finances than the care of the person that they are charged with making sure is being cared for adequately. Next. All right, so there's two types of neglect. In child welfare, it's always somebody else that's abusing the child. With adult protective services, there is a situation which the person, it could be the person who is a victim is also responsible for being a victim. So we call that self-neglect. When a person gets to a point where they no longer have the ability to care for themselves, and the conditions in their home get to the point where they're unsafe. So there may be unsanitary living conditions, infestation of roaches or rats. There could be human or animal waste on the floors or furniture. Unsafe living conditions in the home. The floors could be rotting, or the ceiling could be falling down or falling in, where they don't have the ability to pay somebody to come and fix the unsafe conditions in the home, and they're just living in that situation, unable to do anything about it. There could be a situation where they have no toilet or a commode. They may not have any water to flush the toilet, therefore no drinking water either. So the water or the utilities may have been disconnected because they were unable to pay the utility bills. The house could be filled with dirty trash. And when we say dirty trash, what we're talking about is stuff that would be normally thrown into the trash can and taken out and taken away by the trash sanitation department. So there is other trash that may be in the apartment or house that may be just items that the person is not willing to part with, and then it becomes a hoarding situation. And we see that often as well. In situations where there's self-neglect, we also see dehydration or malnourishment, which comes along with weight loss, and sometimes soiled clothing, or the bed is soiled, or they're left to be in their own waste and unable to clean themselves. And that goes along with the next one, where they're unable to perform their activities of daily living, which is toiletry, going and making sure that they get baths daily. The home is being cleaned or cared for, and then food is being prepared in a sanitary way. Sometimes you also see as indicators is unwashed hair. They may be unclean or unshaven because they're unable to take care of their daily activities involving their cleanliness. So clothing may be inappropriate for the weather. It may be the middle of winter and they're in a short sleeve with t-shirt that is inappropriate and not substantial enough to keep them warm. They may be filthy, or the clothing may be filthy, or it may be even torn. And another thing to be looking out for is the elderly or disabled adult may be wandering in the neighborhood or hallucinating or delusional, and which would also cause them to be confused. So these are the signs that you would look for with self-neglect. Now, some of these may also come along with caregiver or family caregiver neglect, like the dehydration, malnourishment, weight loss, and soiled clothing. If they have a caretaker or a caregiver that's a family member or just a caregiver, and these things are occurring, then it would be on that caregiver as far as the responsibility for the neglect that is occurring. Next. So let's talk about family caregiver or family or caregiver neglect, and some of the things to look out for. With family or caregiver, you may see indifference or even hostility toward the person that they're caring for, maybe excessive blaming of the person. There may be an issue with alcohol or drugs, or a previous history of violence. And if there's a care plan, the caregiver or family member may not want to comply with the care plan or not follow through with the care plan to make sure that the person is safe and receives the services that they need. Also, sometimes we see with caregiver or family member neglect, their social isolation of the person and withholding of affection. And also in caregiving neglect or family member neglect, when they're discuss the situations or incidents with the client or the elder or disabled adult, there may be conflicting accounts of what happened. Next. So what can you do? If you see abuse, report it. It's that simple. And this is a quote from Nancy Buckner, our commissioner with the Alabama Department of Human Resources. She says, "A sharp eye is the best defense against elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation." And she says she urges all Alabamians to watch for warning signs and speak up at the first sign of harm. We at DHR value older adults in Alabama, and we all must do our part to keep them safe. Next. So thank you all for your time and attention. I hope that you have learned something and have additional information that you can use where you will be able to spot elder abuse or abuse of a disabled person when you see it. I will open it up for any questions now, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide, which has my contact information.
Thank you, Sam. Does anyone have any questions for Sam?
Sam, I do have a question. Can you tell us a little bit about if someone were to report, for instance, self-neglect of a family member, what would happen then? What kind of process would happen? You're muted. There we go.
Sorry, I muted
That's
myself.
okay.
This is a common occurrence where people need help and they realize that they need help. And so they contact the department in seeking out help for themselves. Maybe they have the capacity to make decisions, but now they're at a point where they're physically unable to care for themselves. So with the Department of Human Resources, we serve adults who lack capacity, whether it is a physical capacity where they no longer have the physical ability to care for themselves, or if there is a mental capacity where they no longer have the ability to make decisions for themselves. But someone who calls in to the department seeking help because they realize that there is an issue, a safety issue for themselves, and they need help, and they're reaching out for that help. They can certainly expect the department to come and assist them with whatever needs there are. If they're not considered a client of DHR, and when I say that, I mean they do not have any lack of capacity. They have the ability medically to take care of their own needs, or if they have the capacity to make their own decisions, they would not necessarily be considered a client of DHR, but that doesn't mean that they can't reach out to us and the department make referrals on their behalf to help them get services in their local area. So in that case, we wouldn't take an investigation of abuse. We would just simply make a referral and assist in the county in getting the local resources that person might need.
Great, thank you. I wasn't, I guess, even aware that you could self-report, so that's wonderful information to have. Thank you.
Hey, Sam, do you guys offer any type of respite for caregivers if the person just need a break? Because
we do offer respite for caregivers of DHR clients, where the client is a victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and they lack some type of capacity. We do provide caregiver support in those situations. In some situations, the caregiver may just be over their head and not know how to reach out and get help. But even caregivers can reach out to DHR and seek assistance. And even though we may not be able to provide services because they wouldn't be considered a client of DHR, we could certainly reach out and make referrals in the local area for other agencies that might be able to provide those services.
okay.
But one thing that we want to do is we want to be there to help before it gets to the point where the person is at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. If a caregiver feels like they're getting in over their head, they can certainly reach out to DHR and ask for some type of assistance. If DHR, like I said, if it's not someone who is a victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, we can still make referrals and we can still do what we can within our authority.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good to know. Does anyone else have any questions for Sam?
I do. If you have a senior and they don't have anyone and they are incapable of making sound decisions, will the state step in and assume guardianship? You may have already discussed it. I know it was a few minutes late.
Well, the Department of Human Resources doesn't take custody of adults. However, if there is an adult who is at risk because they can no longer make decisions for themselves, and there are safety issues or any other types of issues regarding them that need to be addressed, this Department of Human Resources can certainly step in to make sure that that person is protected and can ask the courts to appoint a guardian, or if they have assets, a conservator as well. And that happens a lot.
Okay, so you will serve as, I guess, a liaison or go-between or advocate on their
Yes.
behalf. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Hey, Sam, have you ever had or DHR requested to be a guardian ad litem for an adult?
DHR does not serve in that role as guardians or guardian ad litems.
Okay.
That would be that'd be an attorney that would be appointed by the court.
Okay. So have you guys ever been appointed to serve by the
No.
court? No? Okay. All right. Does
That's
anyone
not,
else?
it's
Go ahead.
statutorily we're not authorized to serve in that capacity.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Sam? Okay, Sam, I want to thank you for joining us today, being our speaker, and hopefully we'll get you back again. And I'm grateful to be collaborating with Alabama Respite on this project. So I'm looking for more information about our partnership to be coming very soon. So again, thank you. Thanks everyone for getting on, and thank you again, Sam and Tracy, for being the host. And until next time, you guys have a great Friday, okay?
Thank you, Vonda. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, y'all have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.